In this episode, counting. We've all seen it before. You get a big jar of something, big jar of Skittles, big jar of beans or candy of some sort, and you're asked, well, how many are there? And we all go in, we kind of look, and we estimate, and we try to process how many we think there are. But what if we had to do that? What would you do? How would you figure out how much sand was on the beach? How many grains of sand? That becomes a rather complicated problem. Simple solution, of course, is to count by weighing. That's where you just take one of the things. You weigh a bean, you weigh a Skittle, you weigh a grain of sand, and then you weigh the whole group and you divide those two numbers, and now you have approximately how many beans, how many Skittles there are. And so, but then you run into a problem if you think about that. Which bean do you weigh? They don't all weigh the same because they're not all the same size. If I weigh this bean, it's going to weigh a little less than if you weigh this bean. This one's kind of in the middle. And which bean is more representative of all the beans? If you have a huge number of them, this tiny difference in the beans' weights or masses can make a huge difference in the estimate that you come up with. So how do you decide? Well, you can use what we call the Solam. A Solam is a large group of beans, large enough that any small differences in individual bean masses should even out. So what you do is you count out several of them and see what they weigh. A Solam is sort of like a mole. That's the purpose of this instruction, is we're going to actually introduce you to something called a chemical concept called the mole. So a Solam is like a mole, it's like a dozen. It's a group. A Solam is a group. It's 158 or something. So in a dozen there are 12 things, and in a Solam there are 158 things. It's a group of 158. It's kind of close to a gross. A gross is 144 of something, a dozen dozens, but this is 158. It's important that you understand that it's made up. I know this. I made it up. You'll never hear of a Solam anywhere outside of my classroom. This is not something that you will if you go to college and start talking to your professor about Solams, they're going to look at you funny. So the purpose is to help you understand what a mole is when we get to that. But we're not going to do moles today, but like I said, it is kind of like a mole. No, it's not. It's not kind of like a mole. It's sort of like a mole. What in the world was I thinking? Idiot. So how does it work? Well, it's simple. What you're going to do is you're going to count out 158 beans. You're going to weigh them. You're going to find their mass on a balance, and now you have the solar mass of that kind of bean. What is the solar mass? Well, solar mass is the mass of a sun. But that's not important right now. That's not what we're talking about. That's very confusing. What is a solar mass? A solar mass in our context is it's the mass of one solam of beans. So if I weigh out 158 kidney beans, see what 158 kidney beans weighs, that will be the solar mass of kidney beans. It tells you what 158 of that kind of bean weighs, and it helps you count by weighing. So, of course, different kinds of beans are going to have different masses. Kidney bean would have a different solar mass than a lima bean, than a black-eyed pea, different than a Skittles or paper clips, and whatever you weigh is going to have a different solar mass. And so that's what we're going to do next. So your next task is to find the solar mass of 4 different kinds of beans, and we're going to record those on a chart. Then we'll come back and we'll find out how to do math and solve problems counting with those beans, with the Solams.